Welcome for those of you who have joined us. We're thrilled to have you here today. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with our norms. That sounds good for folks. So you're already automatically muted as you're coming into this event, just to diminish any kind of ambient noise. So a couple things, I want to kind of keep folks there, keep folks muted just so that we can hear Gholdy and what she has to say, and there's not an interruption. If folks want to say something or talk during this, it'd be great if you just raise your hand and then I'll seek to unmute you. When you hear Gholdy saying something that, or another person chatting in a response that really resonates for you, I'd love for us to practice some radical acceptance with our bodies. And so typically you're going to see me acting like a cuckoo lady over here being like, yeah! But we invite people to do the same if they can, or you can use your little emojis on, on the chat, on the function bar. There's like a little place to add a reaction. And so if you like something you hear, you can do a little clapping, but just using our bodies to really try to communicate support and encouragement for one another. If Gholdy is still presenting and we haven't gotten to the Q&A part, which will be at the end, and you don't want to interrupt her, then feel free to chat in any questions and I'll monitor the chat and feed those questions to her when time seems right. And also if you hear or see others, saying something that is boldly courageous in any way or is, just really resonates for you, I'd love for us to reflect that back to each other and to give each other praise either through the chat or like I said, again, in the radical acceptance piece. So welcome everyone. My name is Emily Daniels. I'm your host for this conversation with Gholdy. I reached out to Gholdy, I don't know, maybe like mid-July, I think, something like that, because I had seen her speak in an event for Haymarket Books, which Elizabeth Fisher's on this call. I think she was the person who might have first directed me to that event, but it was a talk that was with her and Dina Simmons and Bettina Love, and I forget the gentleman's name, but he was the host of the event.
Brian Jones.
Pardon me?
Brian Jones of the Schomburg.
Thank you. And they were talking about abolitionist schools, and it was such a powerful, I only got to see the recording. I wasn't able to attend the live event, but if you haven't seen that, I'll chat in the link to it. It was such a powerful, I felt like deep dive into really getting at the heart of why we need to be so actively committed to anti-racist education. And so anyways, but listening to Gholdy in particular, she just really resonated for me. And I was like, I wonder if maybe she would do a Convos during COVID for Hear This Now. And so I reached out to her and she graciously accepted. And so here we are. This is a series that I've been hosting through the pandemic. And just super honored to have her here and to have her voice with us. So thank you, Gholdy. Typically, so the firm that I have is called Hear This Now, and I do, along with several colleagues, I do a lot of trauma-informed training consultation. And it's been my mission since about June to really deepen my own personal and professional work around intersecting trauma-informed schools with anti-racist education. And that's because there is no way to not acknowledge the incredible legacy that our public schools have left in terms of the harm that we have caused to children and frankly to staff members of color. And so the deeper that I dive into understanding the science of trauma and its effect on the individual and on families and on communities, the more I recognize that we need to be explicit in our efforts to integrate anti-racist education into trauma-informed schools change efforts. So that's part of why we're here today. And I guess I want to read a brief bio of Gholdy's, and then we can hit it from there. I have some. I want Gholdy to start, and I want to hear a little bit about her passion for the work that she does and how she got started on this journey herself. So, Gholdy, how do you pronounce your first name?
Gholnecsar.
Okay, Gholnecsar Muhammad is currently an associate professor at Georgia State University teaching literacy and language in the Department of Middle and Secondary Education. She began her career as a reading, language arts, and social studies middle school teacher in Cahokia. Is that how you say that?
Cahokia.
Cahokia, Illinois. After teaching in the classroom, she served as a school district assistant curriculum director and was responsible for kindergarten through 12th grade literacy instruction, grant writing, assessments, and professional development. Muhammad received her PhD in literacy, language, and culture at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Her research interests are situated in social and historical foundations of literacy development within Black communities and the writing practices among Black women and girls. She explores 19th century Black literary societies to understand literacy development and how the roles of literacy can be reconceptualized in classrooms today. This is the subject of her most recently authored book, Cultivating Genius, an equity framework for culturally and historically responsive literacy, published by Scholastic Books. So Gholdy, welcome. So thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's really, really, really great. Okay, so let's start with, tell us a little bit about, I mean, I'm that kind of person who I want to know someone's like own journey into what I call heart work, you know, work that feels like it's part of your passion and your calling. And it seems as though that's this for you. So I'd love to hear if you could sort of, I don't know, start us with that.
Well, I mean, so I would say that, and I call it my soul work. So I get it. It's work that feeds my soul, that sets my soul on fire, that ignites my thinking, my being, my activism in this work. You know, when I mean, first of all, I'm a reader, I'm a writer, I'm a thinker, and I get great pleasure from doing those things. It really connects to my identity as a Muslim woman. Islam is like a faith that is centered on being a thinker and an interrogator of context, and also a writer. And literacy is very like deeply seated into the foundation of Islam. So for me, that connects. And, you know, I do the work because I feel like literacy is the foundation for everything, for all content areas. You know, in all content areas, you have to be a reader, writer, thinker, a meaning maker, if you will. And so I love how it's the groundwork and foundation for all that we do and how we exist in the world. And so, and reading, I'll just say, like, from reading like the practices and from the primary source documents and the archival work of Black communities, readers, writers, and thinkers like of the 19th century and these abolitionists, and from the 19th century forward, and a little bit before that too, it creates such a fire inside of me, because I just fall in love with the language they use. Their practices were so forward thinking and were so whole and comprehensive. And so it just kind of, reading from Black folks in the past creates a spark within me to create the book Cultivating Genius, right? To write the book and to create professional learning for teachers and educators, to teach them like how to use Black historical excellence as a way forward, because it was so excellent. You know, I would make jokes that I would fall in love with all the writers reading them from the, you know, 18th and 19th century. So that kind of keeps me going.
So talk a little bit about you. It says in your bio that you yourself were an educator in public schools. And so did your discovery of Black excellence and as you speak, like it almost sounds like you found your soulmates in the 18th century, right? You found them in their, I love that. I know exactly what you're talking about. And so did that discovery of their work come after you had already worked as a public educator, or was that before and you were seeing, like, were you led to them because of what you were seeing happening with literacy development in public education?
Well, a bit of understanding about Black historical excellence came in my as a child, like in the home. And when I was a student at Banneker Elementary School in Gary, Indiana. But when I moved to the suburbs of Illinois, which was mostly white curriculum, white students, white teachers, that there was a neglect, right, for teaching about Black histories and Black identities. And so then I kind of came closer to it in undergraduate and college. And it wasn't until graduate school where I really started to study literacy development more formally and within Black communities. So that's where it came. And of course, as a classroom teacher and as administrator, I would teach, Black historical excellence. I would read about it. I would learn about it. And I started in some ways to start to create spaces for teachers to come into the fold of this work.
So it sounds like it's actually been interwoven. It's been a part of your identity, and it's been an interwoven part of how you do the work for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. It was just, at times it was just cultivated, and sort of cultivated a bit more, like as I, went through the years, and of course in graduate school when I was formally studying it, and I'm still learning. I'm still creating curriculum. Every time I create lesson plans and unit plans on a weekly basis, even though my primary job on this earth is, as a professor, but I teach future teachers and scholars of literacy. And so I try to be engaged with constantly writing and developing curriculum. And every time I do that, I unearth a part of Black history and Brown history that I did not know previously.
I love that. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing right now and how things have, I guess I'm curious about interest in your work. What was it like pre-pandemic? And did you feel like there was momentum that was already being built for, I guess, for public education to kind of grab onto this and want to devour it? Or has that been more in recent months with, consciousness being shifting and people hungering in more of a explicit way?
Right. We've always, it's funny when we say like, oh, I've heard people say since the death of George Floyd, we now need to focus on anti-racism in schools. And I'm like, we have always needed to do that from the days of the 1600s. And this country, it was founded on oppression. Like, we have to be very clear with understanding the history and the truths of where we are and how we got there, right? And so there wasn't a moment in the United States history where we did not have to focus on anti-sexism, anti-racism, religious discrimination. We've always had that need. It may have been amplified for certain people due to the pandemic, and then coming along with that, the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and other brothers and sisters. That may have amplified in people's hearts and minds that this is now a need for our schools, although folks like me and others have been saying it for some time. So I have found before all of this with the pandemic that there has certainly been schools and districts. I spent a lot of time and work in New York City schools, right? And when Carranza, the chancellor of New York City schools, when he came aboard, he had an agenda of equity and culturally responsive and sustaining education. And so he would speak to that in his public talks with folks, in his board meetings and things like that. So there are people who have been pushing this. There have been certain superintendents and leaders around the country who have been pushing this agenda toward equity and anti-racism, some a little deeper than others, but I feel like it has been amplified a bit now that all this has happened, like people are really taking a look like, what is equity? What can it look like? And what can be a pedagogical model? And so what my work helps to do in the book Cultivating Genius, it presents an equity model for culturally and what I call historically responsive education and literacy. So it gives like a practical model teachers can use tomorrow, today, based on culturally relevant or culturally responsive and sustaining education.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know there's sort of like four facets of your approach. Do you want to talk a little bit about it or say a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah. So, like most educators who live socially just lives, who are conscious beings, who are woke, whatever you want to call it, you know, I got to be a little tired with the school systems and structures and what they weren't doing for all kids, particularly Black and brown kids, particularly for Black children, because that's the group that we don't get it right with the most in our US public education system. And so I was tired. I mean, you know, we have the care of someone else's child in our space, and we need to do better. You know, our education system in many ways has been good, and it hasn't been excellent. It's been basic, but it hasn't been excellent. And we are living in 2020. We should be further along in our educational system than where we are today. So when I study historical educational structures, systems, and practices, I find that from the 1600s in the United States to 2020, we are still doing the same thing. We have made some growth and some progress with the text and multiculturalism and all of that, but at a foundational, structural level, from the first textbook in the United States in the 1600s, we can compare that textbook to most textbooks today. And the same problems held in that textbook are the same problems we see in textbooks today, because we have used Europe, certain parts of Eurocentricity and whiteness as the model for the way forward. And so that created and ignited like this spark for a need for transformation for me. And so because I'm a literacy scholar, I went to look at Black literary societies in the 1800s, which is a part of US history, a part of Black history that either no one has known or that no one really talks about. And they left meticulous records for us. They left such great records for us to read and learn from. And this became like a roadmap for me, the blueprint for how we need to do education, how we need to structure education today. And we have never used Blackness as a model. And why wouldn't we? Who else do you know in the United States history that has had the history that Black folks have had? Who has thrived, innovated, created things that we use today, the GPS system and all these sort of innovative things? Who has done that in the midst of such harsh oppressions? Black folks. So regardless of your skin color and what you believe, there is something that Black history has to say that will inform us of how to get it right, that will give us the solutions. And so, and it's funny when people ask me, well, because this is the roadmap, is it just for Black students? See, that is a very flawed and deficit way of thinking. As
Say that,
if Black
folks.
folks, huh?
Sorry, let me interrupt you. I'd like for you to say more about that because I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I think since I know this will be shared with others afterwards, I think it's important for people to really hear that it's very difficult to change systems unless we are trying to humanize systems for all, meaning that, like you're saying, there is an example in Black history that is an example of how to do literacy well. And so it's not about Black or white per se, it's about how do you do this well, but it also may give us some insight into how to make more equity in our schools. I assume, I don't, I don't know, but I'd love for you to talk a bit about that.
Right. So for the past decades, we have been using practices that were originally derived from Europe, from white culture, white ways of being, knowing, experiencing education in the world. No one questioned at that point, well, because we're taking models of whiteness, will this work for Black students? No one questioned that. I mean, we were questioning it, of course, but the folks who are making Common Core state standards, the teacher evaluation, the state assessment, and the curriculum that schools adopt, no one stopped to think about the root of where those standards, where the curriculum, where all of that comes from. And no one said, will this be great for Latinx students? Will this be great for Persian students, for Muslim students? Nobody questioned. But the moment we start with, let's create a model derived from Blackness, from Black historical excellence. Oh, wait, this must be just for Black students. See, because people have to sort out their discomfort with that. Why can't it be for you if it's great? Why don't you see Black history and Black humanity as a part of your own humanity? See, that's the self-work people need to do when they question that. It's like when I do a lot of scholarship on Black girls, and people will ask me like, oh, well, you're writing about Black girls, this must be for Black girls, as if Black girls cannot be a model to be an excellent model for everyone. Learn from the people who have been oppressed in intersectional ways in class, gender, race, sexuality, religion, and so forth. These are the people to learn from. Blackness is like very diverse in linguistic diversity, in ethnicity, in culture, and all of that. So that's how the work began in the model that I write about in Cultivating Genius. And from studying Black literary societies, Black historical excellence, I asked myself, what were their standards for learning? What were their goals for learning, for literacy learning and for educational learning? And education and literacy was synonymous. And so I use it in ways where to be literate means to be educated within the text that I write. And I found that they had 4 standards or goals for learning, but I noticed that they did not call their learning standards. That comes from whiteness. They called them pursuits. That was an intentional word that they used. Now I want you to think about the difference between a learning standard and a learning pursuit. Even when it rolls off your tongue,
I
one
love
sounds
it. I love
more
it.
beautiful than the other. Right?
I mean, I hate standards. That language is, sorry, I got so excited.
You know, like my editor, Lois Bridges, and I, like, you know, I initially wanted to use the language that teachers know. And, you know, we kind of went back and forth, and she says, no, we have to use the word pursuit. And I agreed with her because pursuit embodies this greater life quality of self-determination and quality of life and self-reliance and self-independence. And it feels grand, right? Standards
Makes everything
suggest,
single up the back of me.
yeah. And standards suggest like, let me learn the standards to pass a test, one test. And pursuits kind of feel like this is for my life. A standard feels like this is to pass a test. And so they had 4 pursuits of learning that I write about in the book. Identity development. As they were learning, they were becoming closer to selfhood, building confidence to know self and to know people who were different than them. The second goal was skill development. They wanted to gain the proficiencies in math, science, social studies, language, the arts, and so forth. The third pursuit they had was intellectualism. They wanted to become smarter about new knowledge and concepts and people, places, and things. The goal was not just to cite textual evidence, which is what I see sometimes in ELA classrooms. And then the fourth goal was criticality, and that was becoming socially, politically conscious beings. They wanted to be critical consumers and producers of information. They wanted to interrogate what they read in print and what they read in the world as text, right? So criticality was understanding equity, power, anti-oppression, and anti-racism in their learning. And so collectively, these four goals or pursuits, right? I teach teachers how to set unit plans and lesson plans around these four. And I've added a fifth pursuit of joy. How is my teaching and learning going to amplify joy every day? Because they always sought joy in their learning. It wasn't like sometimes they learned for the mere pleasure of their hearts and the aesthetics of their hearts. It wasn't always connected to a summative assessment. And so it is, yeah, I mean, my work moves today forward by looking at history, if that makes sense.
It makes beautiful, beautiful sense. Like you make me, my heart is singing. I want to read you. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at a couple of the things that folks have chatted in, but people are really resonating with what you're saying. Anti-Blackness is so deeply planted into the American ways. And then Shaza was saying exactly, Gholdy, as you're describing the language of pursuits, that language, which I think is so important, is exactly, I mean, what you just described to me, it's almost like we could just take Common Core and chuck it and just start from what the four pursuits are that you define.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've been doing the last maybe 5 years, has been writing learning standards.
Yeah.
Grounded in those four areas.
Yeah. But the language of pursuits, it's knowing versus memorizing. And to even be saying, and then Sheila wrote Shankoff, but the joy piece, I mean, I think that's just, we have really sucked the marrow out, the marrow of, which to me is sort of it literally is the vibrancy of real learning, is joy. When you feel joyful about what you're learning, that just sticks. And we've really, in my opinion, I think that through standardization in education, we've really sucked the joy out of any education. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. People are just really feeling.
Thank you for sharing those words.
And I'm wondering, so we're at 12:32, and I know we had said we were just going to kind of chat for 20 minutes. I could just listen to you continue to talk. Do you want to see if folks have any questions that they want to sort of chime in here with? If things people are wanting to know in particular about what you're describing?
Sure. Whatever you all like to do. I mean,
yeah,
if
so people
have questions, maybe they can add to the chat.
Thanks, Sheila. I'm a spaz, so I do get excited. Oh, Rena, go ahead, Rena.
It's not really a question. It's more of an observation and a comment in relationship to the intersection of trauma-informed and this kind of teaching, right? For me, what I'm hearing with these, just using the word pursuits rather than standards, and hearing you describe the 5 pursuits, because it's not 4. I'm not writing 4. I'm writing 5. Okay, because that last one is huge. The joy piece is so huge in terms of how these people were so, they were so rich inside, and their resilience. I mean, this speaks to their resilience and the ability to be able to be here today and continue this effort, this fight, this battle, whatever we want to call it. But, you know, joy is something that is not happiness.
Mhm.
It's not. Happiness is you're happy for a minute, happy birthday to you, whatever. Joy is something that comes from within. And so is resilience. And so it's like you hit the nail right in the head, and that's where it intersects, Emily. That's beautiful. It's like a freaking light bulb moment. Thank
I
you.
know, right? I know.
Yes.
This is why I love listening to Gholdy. Every time, everything she says, and I'm just like soaking it in. I'm like, oh my God, I feel it, I feel it, I feel it.
Thank
All
you.
about
Thank
this
you,
magic
Rena. That's such a beautiful comment. I really appreciate your words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, Yulissa, go ahead. Oh, sorry. I mean,
Problem. No problem. All right. Am I unmuted?
yes, you're good. You're good to go now.
Assalamu alaikum, Gholdy.
Wa alaikum assalam.
I just wanted to, so I, I'm loving everything you're talking about. I'm loving this whole time right now. Because yes, this is something that has been, I know as an Afro-Latina, it has always been on my mind. Why do I get treated differently? Because of the way that I look, because of the language I speak, because, and it's always been, like really has been a thing. You know how Facebook shows you all those memories, and it's like 5 years ago, and I'm over here writing about police brutality is terrible. And so, you know, anyway, now that we have the pandemic and everybody's had a chance to sit down in their house and really, white people have, it's like, oh, that's not okay. Meanwhile, people of color have been like, yo, this is terrible. But you know, everybody lives their life, and you just live your life. You just go on. Anyway, as you're talking, so I created an anti-racism abolitionist educator group at my school. It's a committee because I was like, all right, we're gonna do this. And my question to you, Gholdy, is you said you've been doing this work for many years. I am now, as I've been thinking about this for many years, I've been a teacher for 20 something years, I've always thought about it and I kind of snuck things in throughout the years. But now I'm being very deliberate and saying, we have to do, we should be doing. But I am finding opposition. You know, of course, the system is the way that it is, and it does not benefit white people to be anti-racist, or it just doesn't benefit the powers that be to change the system. So I get it that it's like, so I understand the opposition. Like it's not going to benefit you. It's not going to benefit them if we feel better or whatever. But my question to you, Gholdy, is how did you keep on keeping on? Because maybe it's because I'm super sensitive or whatever, but this is like right here, you know. I have Black sons. I have a Black daughter. You know, Trayvon Martin was my child. I cried so much, you know. So everything that's happening, I have a 22-year-old. So you know, this is like, I'm ready. I'm ready for the fight. But what do I do when I know what to do is right? When I know what's right to do, but I'm getting pressure to do the curriculum benchmark, Eureka. I'm like, bump that. We're in a pandemic.
That's an excellent question, Yulissa, and it's very real. I think that's what I was trying to speak to earlier. So, Gholdy, how do you keep fighting the good fight?
Okay, so you said so many wonderful things. Thank you for your 20 plus years of service. We don't say that enough to teachers and educators. So thank you for that. I'm hoping they let us on the airplanes first if you're a teacher, because you know we service this country just as much as anyone else. Okay, so you know, it's sad that you have to sell in education anti-racism. I mean, we're talking about people's lives and humanity, and we're talking about parents, children. It's their educational and human right to have joy, as Rena said, to have education. The model that I write about in the book does not, it still teaches what they're asking us to teach, which is skills only. It's actually more advanced. We were more advanced in the 1800s than we are in Black communities, right? Than we are in schools today. So what keeps me going, what keeps me keeping on, you know, I'm reminded of the quote from Harriet Tubman, and it reads, "If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the tortoise in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going. Don't ever stop. Keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going." Now, that's what keeps me going. If Sister Harriet could have done that, given the harshest realities and oppressions, and she kept going back, I mean, if they could keep going, if our ancestors can keep going so that we could have a better life and a better way forward, because everyone benefits from Black excellence. Everyone benefits from anti-racism, anti-sexism, anti-homophobia, and anti-religious discrimination. Everybody benefits. This is not just for Black and brown students. And in many ways, and you can argue that white children need culturally and historically responsive education more, if not just as much, right? And so what keeps me going is my village of ancestors. Sister Harriet Tubman is in my village. When I see the spark and the light of our children in their eyes and what they deserve, the fact that their parents could have put their children anywhere and they didn't even have to put them in our schools, that's what keeps me going. Seeing the progress, seeing folks like you and educators like you, like I'm not alone in this fight, right? Toward this pathway. That's what keeps me going. Sometimes the haters even keep me going, because as long as we have oppression and oppressive thoughts and oppressive practices, I have to keep striving toward this work, because if not me, then who? You know, many times we have been given gifts of pushing an agenda. And it took me a long time to accept my own gift and my own genius. But we have to recognize and see our genius and our own gifts and ask ourselves, who are we accountable to? And what will we do with that gift and that genius? I am not accountable to any administrator. I'm accountable to Allah in my own life and to my parents. If I am doing what they are pleased with, that's my first thing. And then I'm accountable to the parents and to the community members, that because they have given me their children, right? Or my students' parents. And so we have to rethink even accountability in this work and do things that keep us going, that keeps us well, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually, and all that. And that's the things that keeps me going.
That's a lot. That's a lot. You are just a well of resilience. It's so inspirational. Even listening to you talk, I think, makes other people feel emboldened to keep going too. And sometimes we need that. We need that, like, you know, we just need to hear others that are in it with us say those words, say those kinds of things. Gholdy, it's 12:43. I want to be respectful of the time that I said we would be doing, which is 45 minutes. So I just wonder if anybody who would like to, why don't we take this couple minutes and feel free to unmute yourself and offer Gholdy an affirmation for this time that she has spent with us, because it has been a gift. So if anyone would like to do that, feel free to do so.
Muchas gracias, Gholdy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gholdy. I think what's missing so much in our educational system in our schools is the passion, the joy, like talking about people that were bright and smart and beautiful, and not just, you know, and only the white people. And I feel like if, you know, there's always a chance in that really tight curriculum to really drop in that type of knowledge. So, you know, Clinton, the first woman president, you know, nah, not really. Shirley was there before. And so, and you just keep on going. Like, you know, if you see a kid that likes writing, then Lauren would be a good place where I would start. And she was young and she sat with, you know, the brother of the president of the United States. And, but if you get that, and if actually the teachers, sometimes I doubt that they know that there's so many beautiful, wonderful people of color who did so many great things. And once you know it, it's that energy that you can then drop on your kids, even within the curriculum. Like, and so thank you. I wish, you know, and I know half of the people on this call, hello. And I know we'll drop in throughout this curriculum. And your book was highly dropped during our, in our very large school system, when they decided to go for the white woman to read on the leadership. We nicely mentioned your book as a wonderful place to start.
Oh, I appreciate that and appreciate your words, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Ulissa says, thank you, Gholdy. Sheila says, thank you. And to those who shared, Rena says, Gholdy, I took up too much time already, so I want to thank you and tell you how much joy you brought to my heart just listening to you. Makes me want to keep on keeping on. Sheila says, thank you for reminding me to tap into my own genius.
Yes.
So it's 12:45. Gholdy, it was just such an honor. I hope you have a chance to chat again. Thank you so much for sharing what you shared, and, you know, have a great fall.
Thank you, Emily,
Stay safe.
for creating this platform. Thank you, everyone.
I have a quick comment if I can.
Oh, okay.
Sure,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yeah, so hi, thank you. I am Tim Manning. I live in Maryland, and I'm not an educator by the sense of the profession, but I am a father, so I'm still an educator of my children. We live in Northern Maryland, and my kids go to a predominantly white school, and we fight this fight all the time with the curriculum and integrating, you know, Black history excellence into the normal day-to-day classroom talk. So just wanted to have my kids listen to the adult conversation. So thank you all for facilitating. And, you know, we always tell our kids, you know, we want to treat them as adults. So I just wanted to hear them or have them hear you guys' conversation. So thank you very much. We took some notes, and we'll be interested in reading your book. So thank you all. I didn't know if this was a woman's forum at first, but I said, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna add some diversity in here.
It's okay. There's not often men. Let's face it, most educators are women, so that's
yes. And we would also like to see more Black males, you know, into the school systems.
Yes, we gotta recruit them. So, but thank you, everyone. I'm going to now hop on the next talk, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate your genius. Thank you for all that you do for our communities. Thank you.
Tim, let me tell you something real quick.
I have to log off. Okay, and y'all keep the conversation.
Tim, let me tell you something. I learned, I heard it a couple weeks ago. I've been doing these anti-racism webinars all summer long. Nicole Shimizu, who is an ESOL teacher in California, I believe, or somewhere in the West Coast, she said, when we don't know ourselves, whiteness fills in the blanks. And so I will urge you, because you are their dad, you fill in the blanks for your kids, because obviously school's not going to do it. The curriculum's not going to do it. Thank God for the internet and Google. And there are so many resources, especially right now, for you to fill in the blanks for your kids. I know my elementary school filled in the blanks for me, and that's why I have been able to be the strong woman that I am and grow up to be who I am. Because whiteness has never filled in my blanks. My blanks were filled. So fill in the blanks, Tim.
I love that. I love that, Ulissa. That's beautiful.
Emily, it's Lisa. You, Emily, you, Lisa.
Oh, you, Lisa, sorry. So glad to have you here today with us. It was great.
All right,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody. I know, it's like we don't want to go.
Never when we're talking about this stuff.
Thanks. I got to get back to work now.
I know. Bye.